Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. Welcome to episode 177, Where to Get Writing Ideas. Summertime is usually a time where I'm able to slow down a little bit with doing my writing and teaching and managing all the service responsibilities and administration. And I found that this is really a time where I can kind of just stop for a minute and look around to see a potential new project in the pipeline, a new idea I might want to work with, or possibly a different way to look at a project I'm already working on. And I do a lot with graduate students in the program that I direct. And one of the things that we work with right from the beginning of the program is to talk about where you're finding writing ideas. Most of the students that I have will want to go on to become professors. They'll want to complete a PhD. I direct a master's level program. And one of the things we talk about is that, for a lifetime of academic work, you usually have to generate new ideas or develop your own research agenda or be able to produce scholarship regularly. And one of the common pitfalls, and I know I've talked about this in a previous episode, is with doctoral students. They get their first academic job. If they're lucky enough to get tenure track, that's great. Even if it's non-tenure track, one of the things they usually have to do is produce some kind of scholarship. And so many of them struggle once they've already used everything they can use from dissertation work. Now, for some people, they've actually able to publish during their PhD program because, that was something that was already built in their program or they had the support to do that. But even then, they tend to stay in the same line of inquiry. So one of the habits that I try to have new students get into is to think through, where can I find ideas? Where can I generate ideas when I need something? And I just wanted to use this episode today to just talk through places where I regularly get ideas or I've gotten ideas. So this one, there's no show and tell, pretty much audio only. If you're watching YouTube, great. You can see I'm actually working out of my summertime office at work. So it's not very exciting background, but it is one that is a great space for me to be writing. So I'm experimenting with writing down here again. I'm in the basement of our library on my campus. So I have a little office down here and it's great for writing. Some of the ideas or some of the places where I get ideas tend to be fairly standard for other disciplines. This is probably where a lot of scholars get ideas. But generally in the summer, I do try to read at least one new book in my field. I may not finish it. I may decide, this is not for me. I may get another one. But I generally try to start off the summer with a new academic book. I've not picked mine out yet. We're now heading into, in the US, our Memorial Day weekend. So I haven't gotten to it yet, but I am going to get to it because I like to have that, sometime in the first week or two of June. I like to have a book at the ready that I have something new that I can look at. So that's one spot that I try to just engage with some new scholarship in my field that's more sustained than just a scholarly article. So that's one place where I sometimes will get ideas. So how I find that scholarly book, of course, I look at the areas that I'm interested in, but sometimes I will go through like Amazon or other places and see what the other books are that are recommended. That's helpful. I've definitely asked colleagues just saying, I really need to look at a book about this particular topic that I'm interested in, either to teach a class, do a new research project, and get suggestions that way. But I do try to go for a traditional scholarly monograph or edited collection. So one or the other for that. I know I've mentioned this at some point, but I always do try to support the scholarly press. So I do try to buy it when possible off of the University Press website versus Amazon and so on, just because I know just from supporting academic authors that one of the things that they like to track are their sales and stuff like that. So just a little pitch to do that if you're going to follow this piece of advice. And then what I end up doing with this book, and I know I've talked about this in our Real Life Sabbatical Limited series, I've talked about how I use write-backs with scholarship. And what that basically means is once I take some content from a source, like I know I'm interested in some quote, some let's say a methodology or a model or a graph or whatever, I usually write back to it, meaning I respond to it in some way. So I'll, in a scholarly book, I'll just take notes right there in the margins. I'll write, things that I might want to do with it. I sometimes use Post-its to like stick stuff out of the book, but I try to engage with the book in a couple of different ways, thinking through how that might support one of my projects. So I usually think of it in a way of, can this new work extend what I'm doing? Does it complicate what I'm doing? Does it counteract what I'm doing? Is it not related to what I'm doing? Maybe, could it be a future new project? Where is there a spot that I have a question, or where is a spot that I have an argument? That sometimes that question or that argument can become a whole new scholarly piece. So that could be another one, or another way to get scholarship out of it, beyond just kind of extending your engagement with new research in the field. So scholarly books, edited collections, this is very discipline specific. So certainly in the sciences, you might do better with looking at just latest scholarly journal issues and so on. I'm in the humanities, so books, and scholarship sometimes is where I want to go. However, a second place I do try to look at between 5 and 6 journals. I try to look just at the tables of contents of the last 3 issues. And so this is something where I can put it in a day, and maybe I don't want to actually do like full sustained writing, but I sometimes will just give myself 30 minutes to cruise through those table of contents to see what people are publishing, to see what the journal is publishing, to see. And then what I try to do out of there is, if I see something that looks interesting, I do try to either just print it out so I can take it with me during traveling or whatever, or I might just put it in a quick folder as something to look at when I'm able to read on screen. So that's another spot where I get material, and I do the same thing. I'll look at, the content, decide, does this apply to my project? Does it complicate? Does it extend? I'm working on multiple projects. So episode 9 for our real life sabbatical series, when that one comes out, is about kind of a progress report of everything that I've done so far on the sabbatical. And at the point that it was recorded, I was a little more than halfway. So I could have 5 or 6 projects going. Not every scholarly article or book that I find is going to be relevant for all of those, but it might be relevant for one, or even looking ahead and thinking about future projects. There might be a kernel in there that would make a great conference presentation, or perhaps just a great LinkedIn post, because we've talked about, I know on this podcast that, not all ideas are designed to become full sustained book projects or full sustained, peer-reviewed published articles. So articles and books, those are traditional ways. Here's some non-traditional ways that I get some writing ideas. One of the things that I like to do is, if I'm out on vacation, if I'm in a new location, I do try to think about how my discipline relates to other parts of the world, like out in the real world. So let's say I go on a beach vacation. I am in the area of writing studies. Certainly that relates to lots of different disciplines, but I do try to think about, okay, I'm in this location, what does it mean? And so I might look at, for example, the history of authors that have written on the beach. What kinds of writing strategies do they use? Because I study, writing strategies and project management. I try to use the location in some way as a prompt to help me think through where an idea might come out of that. Certainly, if you're at your university and you do a lot of work that kind of engages with it. So I know we support a lot of administrators and folks on our podcast and through our clients' services. So certainly just regular engagement in your workday sometimes can provide writing ideas, but other places as well. Also, I've talked about this multiple times on the podcast. I don't think I've actually ever done an episode on it, but I'm a big proponent of doing writing and thinking. Or connecting writing and thinking, meaning, for example, let's say you're going out to walk, or you're able to do some exercise, or you're able to, you have a long car ride, you have some time to think. That's sometimes a great way to generate ideas and just let your brain do what it's going to do. You don't have to have an agenda. You don't have to be thinking about anything specific, but you might manage to figure out a couple different ways to think through ideas. So how I kind of prompt that conversation in my head is I try to think about 1 or 2 sort of unsolvable problems that I'm concerned by. So for example, last summer, I know one of the things that I was really thinking about was writing rhythms. and how there's different parts in the year where it seems that it's better to produce scholarly writing than other parts. And I knew there isn't a whole lot of research on this. This is something that I've been kind of interested in for a long time and kind of looking at, because I know from personal experience that a lot of the clients we work with, a lot of the faculty that I work with at my institution they write more at the beginning of the semester, in the fall and the spring, and they write more in the beginning of the summer. And so I don't know this scientifically, I just know this from anecdotes. So I know for me, last summer, I really tried to think through that problem a little bit, like why might that be, before I ever find any of the scholarship on it. So if you can think of like 1 to maybe 3 problems that are maybe your thinking problems, you could kind of assign like, hey, on Wednesdays when I, do my exercise, or I go for a long walk, or I've got this long commute, I've got to go somewhere. That's been a really productive way for me to kind of think through things with a designated time that I'm able to do that. For many of us, especially those of us with children home in the summer, thinking time might be kind of hard to come by. But, even just dedicating 10 minutes in the morning to kind of think through a problem, while having coffee or something like that might be an option. So those are 3 ways so far. So we talked about edited collections and books, reading, finding a new summer reading. We did an episode on summer reading, so I will put that in our show notes if you want to link back to that one. We talked about that. We talked about engaging with scholarly articles. We talked about dedicating some thinking time. Some other places where I get ideas more recently are from a combination of folks that I follow on social media, and then the tangents that they lead me on. So, for example, I like the work of Raul Pacheco. I've talked to him, or Raul Pacheco Vega. I've talked about him lots of times on the podcast. He's got really great tools for writing productivity. He's somebody I initially started following on Twitter/X. And so I still look at his posts on there. The company for Defend, Publish, and Lead, it doesn't post quite as much on X as we probably did in the past, but I still look at it. I still post things, once a week or something like that. So I do try to look at those threads and see what they're looking at, because sometimes people that I follow have some new directions that I'm also interested in exploring, or they put something out there that triggers an idea for me. So that's one spot. LinkedIn, maybe a little less so. I haven't found LinkedIn to be quite as robust as the old academic Twitter. But, I'm still looking on there. So that's another spot. 2 other places that I tend to look for things are podcasts that are in my discipline. Mine's in writing studies, but I also look at ones in higher education and anything in time management, because those sort of overlap with the type of work I'm doing. So podcasts are really great, especially for the long commutes or summer drives or walks. That's another spot where I get ideas. So hopefully, I don't know if this podcast will give somebody an idea, but hopefully one of them does. And then another spot that I will look kind of as maybe a final place is I do try to look at sort of the bigger picture in higher education and how it relates to my discipline. So sometimes disciplinary organizations have newsletters. That's a spot where you can kind of see what are some things that people are talking about in your discipline, just to get some ideas. Other places would be like Inside Higher Education, the Chronicle of Higher Education, Times, the Times Educational, let me think of Times Higher Education. Those places are spots that, kind of talk about issues of the day. So recently, I just had a client work with us on some of the campus protests that have been going on in May of 2024 when this is being recorded. And they wanted to do something with like protest culture and kind of comparing various decades on campus and protest culture, and then some of the rhetorical strategies that were used. So that was an idea that came just from reading about them and some of the techniques that the organizers were using. So, this is one of those things that I think you just have to keep your eyes open to find writing ideas. Here would be one other one that is not related to sort of letting you going out seeking ideas, but one other thing to pay attention to is sometimes in a writing project, you'll find that you have a tangent that you can't make work in the current writing project. I always say, save a list of those tangents, and even better, if you can write some significant notes about why it's a tangent, why it doesn't fit with the project you're already working on. Many of those tangents for me have now become full-blown articles. So that's one way to get some just from a current writing project. Another way to find one is a spot when you're writing where stuff does not work. So, for example, I had a client working on a literature review, and they were really having a problem trying to connect the introduction of the article to the literature review to the methodology, because there were just a lot of different moving parts. It was a mixed method study. There were several bodies of literature to work with, and the introduction itself had to be shorter based on the type of journal. So there wasn't room to draw all those connections. But one of the things that we found in the course of working on it is that there were some really cool connections between the way scholars in that discipline talked about methodology and the way they executed it. So this was a project that person was not planning to do. It was generative from us talking to each other. So to close with a possible idea for writing, there's no harm in having a scholarly conversation over the summer. So I've been kind of lazy about this over my past few summers, but I used to do this with scholars more regularly, where maybe we would get together once a month and, just catch up on a Zoom and talk about what we're all working on and let people ask questions. It can be really informal. So that could be something that if you're interested in doing it, you could think about organizing it. And then, of course, our coaches at Defend, Publish, and Lead, you want to work with us, you can go to Defend, Publish, and Lead and click the button to do a free consultation, or you can email me at Christine@defendpublishlead.com and let me know what you're looking for, because sometimes working with a writing coach can help with some idea generation as well. Finally, I also want to mention that we have an upcoming workshop. So this episode's being recorded in May of 2024. We have an upcoming workshop on using AI using AI to provide feedback on your writing in a couple of different roles. So by now, you're in academia, I'm in academia. We've already seen probably lots of AI workshops about various topics, but I'm interested in this one, and this is why we agreed to do it as our June workshop, is because we can use AI to provide feedback on writing, but not just feedback on kind of the lower level things. We can actually coach AI to take on various roles that we might encounter as writers. So for example, a peer reviewer. We could have AI take on a role as a coach to kind of support us through various challenges. It could take on a role of an editor. I mean, that's one that I think a lot of people are already probably doing with it. And there's other roles that it could potentially take. One could be a if you're thinking about a collaboration, you could talk about, this is you, if you're AI, you pretend to be this particular persona. You are a scientist. I am a humanities scholar. Where are some ways that our research might intersect if we look at these three topics? There are definitely prompts that you can put in that would generate the kind of feedback to mimic getting feedback from a live human being. Now, just for the record, at Defend, Publish, and Lead, we take a curious but somewhat neutral approach to AI. So we are neither pro AI or against AI. I am just starting to use it myself, and so I don't, definitely don't feel prepared to speak on it. I'll be at the AI workshop as somebody learning about it as well too. But I just want to say that I think trying to think about how it might be helpful for feedback might be useful. And we're coming to find that we have some clients with journals that will say, did you use AI to help write your journal article, and so on. In this case, you're not necessarily using AI for that purpose. You might be using it to get feedback on how to work with something. So sometimes you can even prompt it to say, like, what questions might you have about my writing? And then you can use those. So I think the goal for this particular workshop, and I would argue one of the biggest value added things that come with attending it, would be, how do you write the question inside AI to make sure you're getting what you want for your writing? Because what I found, at least with my kind of brief experimentations, is that, of course, it's all in the prompt. Whatever you put in is what you're going to get out. But more importantly, AI a lot of times most of the time builds on previous questions, and they have to be layered. They have to be in a certain order. And I know that this is something that we can definitely help with. So I hope you'll join us. We still have a couple seats available in that AI workshop. And if you are one of our clients, you already have a discount code. If not, you can email me at Christine at Defend, Publish, and Lead and get that code. So hopefully we'll see everybody at that workshop, and happy writing.